Now, I don't usually do EMEA, but today it feels like the right time more than any other. Fnatic just got eliminated from VCT EMEA at the hands of some job life guys. But the bigger story is that 3 tier 2 teams have qualified for the playoffs, which means 7 partner teams have already been eliminated. Welcome to Sinistry, and today we're talking about the pricing happening in EMEA. So how did tier 2 teams end up beating more than half of tier 1? Let's find out. So here I go again, shooting my shot with another EMEA video. Anyway, let's set the stage because Fnatic didn't simply lose. Both of their losses in the play-ins came at the hands of tier 2 teams. In a way, it feels like tier 1 has become a giant wall standing between these teams and the international stage. And maybe that's something we'll have to come back to later. If I have to describe this whole situation, tier 2 teams are basically the guys trying to get with the girl, and by the girl, I mean the international tournaments. The tier 1 teams are the cock blockers standing in the way, acting tough and telling everybody else to fuck off. But the thing is, these tier 1 teams have a massive bodyguard by the name of John Riot. But lately, John Riot realized he's not getting anything from protecting these cock blockers, so he decided to call it a day. And now we're seeing the consequences of John Riot's decision because even Fnatic and Heretics have been eliminated from stage 2. Heretics at least still has a chance to make it to champs via champs points. As for Fnatic, it is the end of the line for them. And when you really think about it, it's no surprise why Fnatic couldn't get anything going. They spent the entire season trying to fill the chronicle-shaped hole in the roster, and at no point was there any real stability for the team to build on. So Fnatic falling apart isn't exactly a mystery. And that's also why I don't want to make this video about Fnatic. Because here's where things get interesting. If Fnatic's struggles were simply a Fnatic problem, then that's one thing. But once we zoom out and look at the destruction these Challengers teams left in their wake, not only we see Fnatic's downfall, but we also see Heretics, Na'Vi, Pacific, Gentlemates, Giant-X, and Eternal Fire also suffering the same fate. Now, just let that sink in for a second. That's 7 tier 1 teams that were eliminated in the play-ins. Sure, not all of them fell at the hands of Challengers teams, but the point is that these tier 2 teams were the ones left standing. And my question is, how did all this happen? Why are 3 Challengers teams, or 4 if you count Job Life, better than more than half of the tier 1 teams? None of this really makes sense right now, so let's talk about it and see if we can figure out why. By the way, we're on the road to 5k subscribers, so a sub would really mean a lot. Going back, the first thing I want to look at is how long these tier 2 teams have actually been together. Looking at their history, most of the teams that have been destroying tier 1 right now were only put together recently. So beating partner teams isn't simply because they have some chemistry or longevity advantage. Moving on, I have a few theories I want to test. First off, we have the widely known belief that EMEA, for the longest time, has lacked talent. I've seen that argument come up time and time again. But if the play-in showed us anything, it's that some players simply weren't in the right places. And having those players in tier 2 opened up the possibility for these upsets to happen. So how did these players end up in Challengers when they could have been signed by the very team they're beating now? This brings us to my next theory that VCT EMEA has a scouting problem. I see players like Azuri, Hezecoil, and Monster, to name a few, and I ask myself, why are these players not in tier 1? These guys dominated their leagues, and when they got the chance to play on tier 1, they showed everyone that they've got what it takes to play in the big stage. So maybe there is something to the idea that tier 1 teams aren't always finding all the great talents out there, but that still doesn't explain how these Challengers teams were able to beat so many tier 1 teams. Because if scouting was the only issue, then how do we explain players like Kayak, Lovers Rock, and Sayonara? Players who have already made that jump into tier 1. And if scouting doesn't explain the whole picture, then maybe the answer lies somewhere else. I need to go back to Koshmaras because he said that these tier 2 teams were hungry as well. And although the play-ins from the other regions haven't concluded yet, I am inclined to think that tier 2 teams from other regions are hungry too. But the difference is, they're not winning as much as EMEA's tier 2 teams. So is hunger really a factor that allowed EMEA Challengers to pull off this massive upset? See, I don't really get this. Does this mean that tier 1 teams are not as hungry? And if that's the case, then why? Because if there's any team in EMEA that could afford to not be hungry, it would be Fnatic. It might have been a while since they've won anything, but no one can deny the fact that they've already won 2 international trophies. And another team would be Heretics. Sure, they won a Mickey Mouse tournament, but what matters is that they won something, and it's for a whole lot of money as well. So for the rest of EMEA, I expected them to be just as hungry as the Challengers teams, and also to come in with an air of superiority, a sense of pride that says, you aren't taking our spot. But instead, they got eliminated. In a nutshell, when the Challengers teams came knocking at VCT's door, these tier 1 teams be like, "Come in, please, sir." Huh? As much as I refuse to believe that tier 1 teams who haven't proved anything yet aren't hungry to win, the results speak for themselves. It makes me question whether tier 1 came into the play-ins with the same urgency as the teams trying to take their place. And just imagine what it does to the mindset of both sides when tier 1 teams have their spots protected while tier 2 teams have to fight like hell for every opportunity. One side has every reason to become comfortable while the other has every reason to become hungrier and hungrier. So, we've talked about quite a lot of possibilities, and while they may explain part of why these upsets happened, none of them gave us the definitive answer. And usually I would beat around the bush and build hype around the idea, but we've been at it for quite a while now, so let's go straight to the jugular. And in my opinion, the thing that made these upsets possible was none other than the entire tier 1 system itself. For years, VCT and Challengers existed as 2 separate worlds. You could build a world beater team in Challengers and dominate the entire tournament, but dominating the league alone could only take you so far. A team had to grind for the entire year, qualify for, and then win Ascension just to play in the VCT. The following year, by then, half of the players had probably already been poached by other teams. And because of that, Tier 2 started to suffer. Teams had fewer reasons to invest in the scene where there was barely any path to the top, while players who popped off could easily get picked up by Tier 1 teams, leaving Challengers an ecosystem that made little sense. Meanwhile, the teams inside Tier 1 were living in a bubble. A team could suck ass, but their place in the league was never really under threat from the teams below them. And that's where I think the system became a problem. It acted as a shield, allowing mediocre teams to exist without having to worry about getting replaced. Meanwhile, outside that bubble, you had Tier 2 teams fighting for every single ounce of opportunity they could get. And when they finally got one, well, 7 partner teams didn't survive. So, for years, we could only see EMEA by the teams Riot allowed us to see at the top. What VCT EMEA didn't realize is that the real battles were fought outside of the VCT. So, to answer the question how Tier 2 was able to beat the VCT, well, John Riot opened the doors and the Challengers teams came in like a tidal wave, and more than half of the partner teams were swept away in an instant. Now, these Challengers teams have overcome what I would call the easy stage, but ahead of them are 5 more Tier 1 teams. Do you think they have what it takes to break the status quo and go all the way to the top? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's by tuning into the playoffs depending on when you're watching this. And as always, thank you for your time. Leave a like if you enjoyed, hit that sub button so you don't miss out, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.